cycle. So I had an offer letter. 6 months later, same sort of letterhead, revoked. Right. So I was like, okay, abhi kya? What is plan B and plan C? The plan A was US, wo nahi hua. Plan B was job chala gaya. And therefore, plan C was, why don't I do an MBA? In my batch, folks who had joined from IIMs, even Jamnalal Bajaj, they were in business roles, investment banking, some very, very cool things happening. We were in operations. So we started with operations. But I was very clear that this is what will help me get to where I want to get to. I'll find it hard to pick on industries which are as exciting as payments is right now. It is changing literally by the day. Some of it is driven by customer needs, customer asks, tons of innovation happening in the fintech space, in payments. Some of it is driven by the regulator. The RBI is, makes wholesale changes these days on, on regulations, and then the entire payments ecosystem has to adjust and make sure they are compliant with those regulations. So there's a whole host of things happening in the payment space that makes this job that much more exciting.
You must be thinking another pre-roll? Wait, let me just skip it. With all theory, there are some boring things which you can avoid, like the long wait for promotions or increments, or the numerous interviews before you land your dream job. At All Tuni, we make sure that you're future ready and skilled to be in the top 0.5% class. Click on the link in the description now.
Amongst the many things that we keep getting on our YouTube handles, etc., is that bring people from non-IIMs, bring people from not necessarily the top B schools, and tell us about their career journeys as well. And this entire series, this season, we are going to try that a lot. We've already done that, and we'll continue to do it. So I have with me a Mumbaikar who is been a banker all his life. His journey is obviously going to be very different from some of the speakers that we've heard so far. And there is obviously a lot of grit in his story, and we'll know more about it from him. So Manish, thank you for doing this. So first simple question, why did you take up engineering, and why did you not join your family business?
I think sort of joining the family business, and I do come from a business background. All my family, extended family, is all business, and that's the nature of the community. But that was somehow inherently never an option for me. I think the reason for that is I've had a very played, straightforward sort of journey throughout my career. I'm extremely risk-averse as a person, and so once you're that, business is automatically a very, very difficult thing to do. And I was very clear. I wanted to do what I'm doing now, which is, work in the corporate banking world. I'm fortunate enough to be working in the payment space where there's so much going on, as some of you might know. But it was not a decision that was, that I had to make. It kind of got made for me, and I'm going to now try and answer your second question around engineering. I didn't really take up engineering. Engineering happened to me. Engineering started, I said, chalo, theek hai, sab kar rahe, hum bhi karenge. I first couple of years, does everybody know what A.T.K.T. is? Up, tapka, cup, tapka. So I had, my first couple of years was full of A.T.K.T.s. I was, all over the place. I was actually inside a Viral local, not knowing what the hell was happening to me. Tried to get off at Andheri, couldn't get off. So we had these few of us who had A.T.K.T. said, "Arey, Bill Gates kar sakta hai, to hum bhi karenge." Look what happened to him. Let's all drop out, and do something about it. But thankfully, nobody allowed us to get off at Andheri. So battered, bruised, reached, sort of somehow got my engineering degree, the computer engineering degree at that. Reached Virar, got off the train, and I was back to not knowing what to do. So, but yeah, so I mean, short answer is business was never an option. I had to do sort of, and therefore I had to sort of study, I had to do engineering. That was the thing to do that time.
So again, you were confused after engineering, Abhi, what do I do? So it's like, again, MBA also happened because...
It was by elimination. So by the end of, again, for those of you who've done engineering, the default, and this was, guys, I'm old, 2001, right, when I did my engineering. Just preceding that, so in the late 90s or so, there was this massive internet .com boom, right? Think of it as, the crypto of today, right? It was the most happening thing. There were jobs all over the place. On engineering campus, large tech companies used to come, literally with trucks, actually not figuratively with trucks, and, used to hire everyone they could see, right? Specialization didn't matter. That poor chemical engineering guy, he's saying, sir, test tube and beaker, and he's like, come, I'll show you keyboard. Come, I'll take you to Mysore, put you up in a fancy, training facility, teach you Java, and you're off to the races. So there was this huge tech boom, right? The one criteria that these companies had on campus was academics, right? And I had my A.T.K.T.s to show. So I automatically did not qualify for those sort of hugely interesting jobs. But because there was a boom, बाद में काफ़ी सारे companies आ जाते हैं. They say अच्छा किसी को कौन place नहीं हुआ है, आप आके बैठ जाओ हमारे truck में. So then that's what happened with me as well. And in 2001, I had an offer before I finished my engineering. That was the thing to do if you're. So the other thing to know is 80% of my batch had given their GRE and was set to, halfway through to the US by the time engineering finished. That was just how it was at that time. I wasn't. I had, again, going back to the risk-averse, I was just, I'm going to do I'm going to be in India. I didn't have the energy to sort of go overseas at the time, so I was happy doing what I was doing. I was like, job karenge, Java mein coding karenge, and be here till about 65 and then retire. 2001, the boom, the .com boom became the .com bust. Everything collapsed. It was mayhem. Our entire technology world collapsed around us. Everyone lost jobs. And in that process, I lost my job as well. So I had an offer letter 6 months later, same sort of letterhead, revoked. Yeah, right? I mean, you can keep the offer, but there's no office that there is to come to because they shut down. Right? So I was like, okay, abhi kya? What is plan B and plan C? The plan A was US, wo nahi hua. Plan B was job chala gaya. And therefore, plan C was, why don't I do an MBA? Right? And so I was thinking more of an insurance policy कि अगर कुछ नहीं हुआ तो मतलब कोई एक कॉलेज में MBA कर लेंगे. Tied over this crazy recession period from 2001 to 2003-4 odd, and then re-attempt to get into the corporate world and find a job. I took my CAT, failed miserably. I also happened to, at the same time, take the CET, which was the Maharashtra ka version for MBA admissions at that time. That was a bit of a tipping point. I got into a college called Sydenham Institute of Management here in Churchgate, and that is how sort of MBA came about.
Would you say that you were not that ambitious early on?
I would strongly say that, yes. And that changed completely during my 2 years of MBA, right? And that to me was the defining sort of part of my career, those 2 years. And it had part to do with Sydenham and the college itself, but most of it was to do with everything around stuff that happens when you do your MBA, right? Group activities, the stuff, public speaking and everything, which most of you guys now take for granted. That is something that sort of shaped my career, shaped my personality. I went into MBA a very different person, not ambitious, not knowing what is going on, and came out of MBA a lot more focused. I knew by the end of it that I had a few sort of, roughly at least I knew what kind of career I want to be in, what interests me, etc., etc. So that the 2 years really changed or flipped over my thinking from being completely not ambitious and stuff happening to me versus being a little more being in control of what I wanted to do.
Like a Mumbai MBA kid journey is obviously very, very different from what you normally hear about. So also I think you used to compete with colleges here in Mumbai also a lot because they all came via the MH-CET route at that time. So tell us about those days.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In Sydenham, it was a completely student-run college, right? It was government-funded, government-subsidized. To be fair, fantastic faculty, fantastic ways of teaching and all of that. But everything outside of that had to be done by students. So we had to literally organize lectures, call up professors, all of us, literally. That built a very strong sense of community in that student, in all of us, right, as students. We had to work together. Agar job chahiye, so you only get it done. You're the one who's literally calling up companies, being told that, sorry, we stop at the IIMs and we don't go beyond that all the time, but still going at it, right? And that's where I heard the previous speaker finishing towards the end saying everyone is a salesperson. That was my first experience at selling. I was literally selling the institute, I was selling our students, I was selling myself, saying, "Aap aa jao," and the guy I'm speaking to says, "Are you available for an interview?" I said, "You can't do that, you come on campus and you meet everyone and do your interview." So that was a hugely enriching sort of time. We had no infrastructure, no folks helping us out with all of this. It was all a do-it-yourself. But that's what worked for us. That's what got us that confidence of speaking with these corporate companies who you had never spoken to in your entire life. HR heads, cold calling HR heads on landlines. We didn't have mobiles then, saying, "Please, can you come to campus?" And while you're at Jamnal Bajaj, who's just across the street, 10 minute के लिए यहाँ भी आके 2 students से मिल के जाओ, right? That was just the reality. So this was hard selling we had to do. But till today, that skill set that I picked up in 2 years has been, tremendously useful. I use it all the time when I have to sell, even now. Now, I am now in the corporate banking and payments world where, I'm selling to different people. I'm selling to, or I'm selling different products, but I'm really selling to the organizations. I'm in B2B sales. So I'm really doing the same thing that I did at Sydenham.
That's the thing, right? Whatever it takes, and you develop that skill and the spirit. Okay, we'll do whatever it takes.
Some of it comes from being second tier almost, right? And if I do an honest self-assessment of my early sort of schooling, engineering, etc., and like I explained, right, because of all my academic performances, etc., I was almost always second tier. The only difference I try to make is I try to use that to my strength. I just try to, I believe that if you're second tier, you'll just work that much harder, right? And this was actually during my MBA days when you used to have these advertising and marketing classes, which actually I used to really enjoy. We were told about this interesting case study from the 1960s, believe it or not. I mean, I wasn't there. I am old, but I'm not 1960s old. But I learned about that in MBA class. There was this case study of Avis and Hertz, right? Hertz used to be the market leader as far as car rental companies is concerned, global market leader in based in the US, but global market leader and all that. And Avis wanted to make an entry and disrupt their business and all of that. They ran this fantastic marketing campaign around "We try harder because we are second." If you don't know about this, read about it. It's fantastic. They put out communications just based on that, saying, "Hey, Avis cannot afford to give you a poor rental ride or whatever. Avis cannot afford to have dirty ashtrays in the car." So they attacked Hertz purely on the basis of saying, "We are second, so we will try harder." And I realized, ये तो हम लोग का story है, that's literally what a lot of my career has been, at least at that time it was. So it just meant that, we would just end up trying harder. And that's exactly what we ended up doing during MBA and even after, actually.
Awesome. So then finally, what kind of a job did you get? And obviously you didn't start off like an IIM management trainee, although you worked for some of the biggest banks, in the world, and your CV is super impressive. But at least the start would not have been that easy.
It wasn't, because you don't automatically, get into that, as you said, right? The fancy management programs that all of these companies run. I started with operations. So actually, going back to campus, because of the way we had to run around, get jobs for ourselves, and like I said, right, that was the big change for me. I was fortunate enough to get onto the first company that came on campus, which was Citi at that time. But it was in operations, right? So I started in operations, but at that time, what was different was I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in banking. Operations, to my mind, was a fantastic start. I didn't get all the, bells and whistles that in literally in my batch, folks who had joined from IIMs, even Jamnalal Bajaj, they were in business roles, investment banking, some very, very cool things happening. We were in operations. So we started with operations. But I was very clear that this is what will help me get to where I want to get to. And since from that point on, I've just been sort of lucky to have those opportunities come my way. I started with Citi. I've been lucky to have worked with, Bank of America, HSBC, and I now work for Visa, the credit card company. Actually, I'll probably break that up into two as well. So my first 3 years or so, I moved jobs very quickly. I literally moved 4 jobs in 3 years, I think. For the next 16 years, I've moved 2 jobs. So once again, you start your career early, you're probably at the lowest rung when it comes to salaries, etc. So you just follow the money, right? You just like, the next offer that comes your way, which is 10% higher, you just take it. And that's how I moved those 3 or 4 jobs.
But was it a good thing or a bad thing looking back?
It was not a good thing at all. I realized after I changed my 4th job, I think that my CV was starting to look like a booklet, right? I was like, "Ye lo mera CV," pura ek book. It had started to become. But no, I mean, look, it's not good or bad. It's just not something I wanted to do. So to be fair, when I looked at how I want my career to progress, that was not the idea, right? So I kind of took a step back, and I thought to myself that this is not, how it should be. And so for the last 16 years, it's been, a couple of relatively stable and more sort of business-like jobs. And I have been a lot more patient with what I'm looking for to achieve out of the next year and the year after that and the year after that, rather than just saying, hey, I'm not happy here, what's my next company looking like?
So what do you do, Manish? Abhi operations, banking, all these big words are fine, but I think it's important for people to know what is it that you do if you have to explain it to somebody very simply.
Yeah.
Have you been doing the same thing, by the way, or have you been in the same space?
I guess the 2 broad areas that I've worked in is a big part, about 12 to 13 years of my career has been in corporate banking. Within corporate banking, I started with operations. I've done client servicing, I've done product management, and I've done sales, right? So I've kind of moved roles within that space. Corporate banking is how, when the way you and I are retail customers of all of our banking relationships, there are corporate customers of every bank as well, right? So there'll be small businesses who bank with their respective banks. There'll be large corporates who will have, banking relationships and so on and so forth. And while it sounds simple, there are complexities around what products you offer corporates, which is very dramatically different from the banking services that you and I use as customers of banks. What it meant is you had to sort of come up the curve with the skills of learning corporate banking, understanding what it means to lend to corporate customers, not to you and me. I'm sort of in the payment space where you have to figure out what are the payment needs of a customer, right? It sounds really simple. Today all of us have Google Pay. All of us use UPI to make payments, for lunches and whatnot. It's a lot more complex in the corporate payments world. The products and solutions and the processes that a corporate follows to make payments to whoever they need to make payments to is very different. So I have kind of been learning that for the last 18 odd years, and that's really the work that I've been doing. I'm now in a slightly adjacent industry. I work for Visa, but I am still within Visa. I'm in the corporate payments part of Visa, and as all of us may know Visa as the logo on all of our cards, but we do a lot more than that. We are actually we are now in the space where we want to be anywhere where there is money movement. So if money is moving from me to Ankit, or between all of you, as Visa, we want to be doing that. So it's an interesting space. So yeah, I'll quickly touch upon your question, Ankit, on why I said I'm lucky. Is that I'll find it hard to pick on industries which are as exciting as payments is right now. It is changing literally by the day. Some of it is driven by customer needs, customer asks, tons of innovation happening in the fintech space in payments. Some of it is driven by the regulator. The RBI is, makes wholesale changes these days on, on regulations, and then the entire payments ecosystem has to adjust and make sure they are compliant with those regulations. So there's a whole host of things happening in the payment space that makes this job that much more exciting. I think it's safe to say that we are at a stage where India probably now has one of the best, or I dare say the best, payments and settlement system in the world, right? And that's saying a lot, right?
You must be thinking another pre-roll? Wait, let me just skip it. With all theory, there are some boring things which you can avoid, like the long wait for promotions or increments, or the numerous interviews before you land your dream job. At All Tuni, we make sure that you're future ready and skilled to be in the top 0.5% class. Click on the link in the description now.